Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studios. What a day it is. Last night's game was about as good an NCAA performance as you'll see out of the Tennessee program. Granted, take it out of the first round where they whip up on a Wright State or somebody. Tennessee doesn't have a long list of teams over their NCAA tournament history where they've just blown somebody out of the gym. And granted, UCLA late made it look closer than it was, but for that kind of a win against a team that was seeded 7th or higher, you don't have many of those in UT history. So that was one to savor as Tennessee goes to the Sweet 16 for the third straight year under Rick Barnes. First time he's done that since 2002, 2003, 2004. And one of those that he made was a Final Four run. Is that an omen? We'll discuss. We got a lot to talk about with last night's game. We've also got some spring football to bring in here. And then later in the show, we'll talk about Kentucky or Illinois. Who does Tennessee want next? We'll get your take on that in the poll. We'll also give you a visual breakdown of how Tennessee compares to the remaining teams that stand between them and their first ever Final Four bid. Let's get into it. First segment of this show brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. Folks, when you need an attorney, do your research. A lot of firms want you to think they're local. Their ads make them look local. But when you do the research, you'll find they've got a paralegal and a strip mall office here, and that is it. They're still in Birmingham. They're in Memphis. They're somewhere outside the state. Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm are right here in Knoxville, right in East Tennessee. Marcos is from here. Get the best local attorney you can. And that's Marcos Garza. GarzaLaw.com to learn more. All right, let's welcome in our panel for the day. We still got somebody waiting in the wings over there, but we got Josh Ward right here, Chuck Cavaleris right here, Will West right here. Thanks to all of you for being here. Again, in Tennessee tournament history, in terms of bigger wins against teams that were seeded 7th or higher, you beat Duke pretty badly in 2023, just a couple of years ago. You whipped up on UConn, who was defending national champion back in 2000. That's it. Now you add another blue blood. You did it to Duke, you did it to UConn, now you did it to UCLA. Josh, I'll start with you. Just your takeaways on what I feel was one of the best showings ever by a UT basketball team in the big dance.
Yeah, there's no question about whether the better team won in that game. Tennessee looked like a team that's been talked about as a real Final Four contender, a potential national title contender, and Tennessee turned it on. It wasn't the best start. We've seen that plenty of times in NCAA tournament games, but too often a slow start can carry over for 40 minutes and becomes a game that you have to fight to win. You might get upset. It didn't happen in the first half. Tennessee turns it on late, carries it over into the start of the second half. The guys that we've talked about all season led, Zakai Zeigler at point guard, Chaz Lanier stays hot to start in the NCAA tournament. So the guys that led needed to, and Tennessee didn't allow UCLA. I know the final few minutes, UCLA's putting some points on the board, but the game was never in doubt. Tennessee left no doubt about which team was better.
Led by as many as 19, I think, topped out. Yeah. Chuck?
Could that have been Tennessee's biggest win ever in Rupp Arena? I mean, that's kind of one of the things I was thinking. I know you've got more than a lot of people would think, or a lot of schools have. The half-court trap, guys, to me, that changed everything because you outscored them 8-0 to end the half.
And then 3-0 to start the next half.
Yes. Yeah. And then I think, it was like 11-5 or something like that, or going in the second half. So that was really, UCLA didn't have an answer for that. And even if they did get it across midcourt, guys, they settled for just getting across midcourt, and that makes the press win even more. Not only, and one time it was Lanier at the end of the half, got to steal, goes in, layup, foul, three-point play. Mm-hmm. But if you settle against the press just to get it across half court, I wouldn't stop pressing. Because my dad coached me, and he always said, you have to beat the press or they're going to beat you. And I think that was true.
Well, clearly UCLA, their ball handlers weren't ready for that. And the way Tennessee, it's interesting they didn't ratchet it up earlier. But, boy, when they put it into effect there, as Chuck pointed out, it's an 11-0 run over the course of, we cross over halftime, 11-0 run that basically changed the game. Because that looked, before that run, you're sitting there thinking, okay, this is going to be a neck and neck thing right to the end. I hope we don't, and it also started with fouls being called all over the place. You're
really.
like, okay, here we go. Is this the night that Tennessee fouls out of the whole tournament? So the fact that they turned that on there at the end of the half, it was a big adjustment by Rick Barnes. He deserves credit for doing it.
No, I thought there were two huge adjustments by Rick Barnes in this game, and I tip your cap to him. That guy's a really good coach. This is a really good basketball team.
Second adjustment was
the second adjustment was going straight downhill with Zeigler. Off the ball screen, instead of ball screen, he dribbles looking for an outside shot, move the ball side to side. Let's try to find an outside shot. Zeigler goes straight downhill. And they also initiated their offense incredibly early in the possession. How many times have we seen Tennessee scores 23 points the first 10 minutes of a half? Rick Barnes tells Zakai, slow it down. They slow it down, they get into their half court, and they kind of go slower about it. They went straight downhill, and I thought that attacking style, it helps Chaz Lanier because he's a guy that wants to play in space. It helps Igor Milicic. He's a guy that wants to play in space. And in basketball, you're just better in space versus trying to compact it. And I don't know that there's a point guard in the United States of America, especially that's left in the tournament, that can stay in front of Zakai when he's coming downhill off of a ball screen like that. So either you're going to go over the top and then you have the pick and roll that's just wide open, or he's going to come straight downhill if you hedge on that bad boy, and there's going to be layups that happen. So I thought Rick Barnes with the trap first and then working to that, I thought that was magnificent. I will say I have a concern, though, because about midway to the second half, once Tennessee had just dominated them, UCLA goes to a three-quarter court press, which forces Tennessee to be slower about taking the ball up. And I do wonder, is that going to be a problem? Will someone look at what Tennessee did against UCLA, if it's Kentucky, if it's Illinois, and say, let's press them to make sure they don't go fast on us because we can't stay in front of Zakai?
I thought Zakai Zeigler looked fantastic yesterday. There aren't many games where I thought he was more in control, especially, again, once the last couple of minutes of the first half and then that back half, it was one of his best showings. You look at what he and Lanier have done in this tournament so far. Last night, Lanier with 20 points. He had 29 against Wofford. Zeigler with 15. Gainey with 13 last night. You also had, just in the first two games, Zeigler has now passed broken Johnny Darden's record for assists, and Johnny Darden was in attendance. Chris Lofton was in attendance yesterday when Lanier breaks his record for threes in the season. You're hitting some pretty impressive numbers here. I'm someone who said on the show, and we've debated this, I liked last year's team. I thought last year's team was more dangerous than this year's team. Main reason being you had offense. Your offense is always going to be your offense under Rick Barnes, but I thought you had more offense last year. Plus you had your normal defense, and you had Dalton Connect. You had this magical guy that, if all else fails, use him. What I saw yesterday, and what I saw against Wofford, if you go back to the first round game, they were really never pressured in that. People
they
I
played
know
with their food,
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of a big brother with his hand on the little brother's head. You can't hit me. Maybe I'm coming over to your side. This team is looking awfully dangerous. If I'm the next team, if I'm Kentucky or Illinois, and I know Kentucky's beaten Tennessee twice. I know Illinois almost beat Tennessee.
Right.
I'm not sure I'd be happy to be playing Tennessee right now.
They're good when they do this. When they try to slow it down, this is how they lose, right? I would say this: Chaz Lanier's not going to shoot better than 50% beyond the arc continually. Yeah. So that means he's going to regress to the mean and have a 33% beyond the arc shooting night. How does the rest of Tennessee's offense react when that happens? But the other thing, when you look at the other teams that are there, Illinois, you've already beaten them. Kentucky, I don't know if they're going to be there because Mark Pope won his first NCAA tournament game just 2 days ago. And then Houston, did you watch the Houston-Gonzaga game? Gonzaga came back because they did a half-court trap on Houston.
Yeah, and Houston
and they
could not
handle it.
No,
so if Tennessee can do that against L.J. Cryer and those guys with the Cougars, you got to feel good about Tennessee's chances.
Tennessee with 13 second chance points last night, and once again, 14 of 16 from the free throw line. Right. Another thing that they continue to take advantage of, when they get to the line, they put it in the hole. Overall, are you feeling better about? You've watched 2 games now. Where are you with this team? Are you sitting there thinking this team may be ready for a better run than I expected, or are you sitting there going, nah, this is what I anticipated?
Well, it's kind of what I anticipate. I think it just kind of reaffirms what they're capable of doing. Pre-game, during the game, post-game, Rick Barnes stressed rebounding. And he does that all the time, right? But he, after the game, he's talking to the team. Tennessee puts out the video, and he asks, what were we rebounding? Plus 10. They're going to emphasize it again because those little things matter, taking care of the basketball. I know turnovers late, but Zakai Zeigler, control is the word you use, John. That's right. Yeah. They have a point guard that can control the game. He sees everything on the floor. So if we compare this year's team to last year's team, I might take last year's team, but I also think about, well, Zakai's a year older.
Yeah.
Jemai Mashak, a year older. Jordan Gainey and what he can do, and he'll be an important player in the next weekend. They're a year older, and that matters at this time of year. So this team has shown what it's capable of. Our shot's going to fall. We can ask that question with any team, but this team is capable of going on a run beyond next weekend.
And I feel better, John, because of one thing Zeigler said after the SEC tournament, the runner-up finish, when you lost to Florida. He said there was so much motivation in that, watching the confetti fall on your rival, and that carried over. I think it resonated with a lot of those guys, and I think they're showing some of that too. It means something when all of a sudden now your next loss is your last, and it's over.
Well, and I also say this: they didn't look tired.
No.
They went the extra distance in the SEC tournament. They did not look tired. So there you go. For those of you like, they won't be tired, they're young. They didn't look tired. Okay. Now, sometimes they do look tired, but that's okay. When we come back, with 3 Sweet 16 trips in a row now, let's talk about the Vols program and where it is, and let's talk about Rick Barnes' tourney record now. That's next. Coming back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company, Nudura Concrete Forms. That's what we used in our studio for the Sports Source Digital Network. They're fantastic, strong as can be. Exterior installation finish systems, manufactured stone. If you're about to start building, if you're about to build a big project, small project, these are the types of cutting-edge materials that you can get your hands on at A.G. Hines Company. They're cutting edge both in technology and in terms of efficiency, energy efficiency, cost efficient. AGHines.com is where you can learn more. Gordon Hines and his whole family down there at AG Hines, they're just good people. Get down there and see them if you have a building project that's about to launch, because these guys have been supplying building materials since anyone can remember. All right. Tennessee has now made 7 straight NCAA tournaments. They've reached the Sweet 16 3 straight years. They reached the Elite 8 last year and could still reach their first Final Four this year. We showed a few weeks ago that Rick Barnes has been the best NCAA tournament coach in the SEC over the last 6 tournaments. He's got more units, more wins piled up than anybody else in those years. Will, has he turned a corner in March, in your opinion?
I think so. I thought, especially with the way he's been able to, the last few years, evolve what he does offensively. Now, there are still those moments where his defense will struggle because of what they do offensively, that he'll yank them back, which I don't love. But I have Tennessee in the finals losing to Florida. And the reason why is I believe Rick Barnes has changed. I also think basketball's changed. He's better right now, it seems like. I don't know if there's a team or a program in the nation that has benefited more from NIL and the transfer portal in the sport of college basketball than Tennessee has. Look at what it's done for them the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think Rick Barnes has changed because he knows the new way of doing business. I think that he's evolved enough offensively that, especially in this day and age in college basketball, Tennessee can absolutely make a run. And I think Tennessee will get the program's first ever Final Four this year.
Okay, well, let's hold off on the last segment is the projections. Okay. Talk to me, guys, about Rick Barnes. Do you feel more confident in him in the tournament now?
I mean,
or is it still too soon to say? It's a body of work versus 3 years now.
It helps to have some senior guards, right? I mean,
Sure.
the NCAA tournament, we've known for years, guards can dominate, especially if they tend to be lower scoring games. I think in the tournament, had you lost 3 straight to the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament, so I still have a hard time considering UCLA as a
Right.
Big Ten team.
Yeah.
But you hadn't played very well in postseason against the Big Ten, correct? You'd seen them in your season. When you
Yeah,
talk
we're
about
getting-
Michigan, you
yeah,
talk
Michigan
about
and
Purdue.
Yeah.
So to get a win and advance, I don't know necessarily that they've turned the corner under Barnes. I think he's always been a pretty good basketball coach. I just think you've
Hasn't
got
been in March.
Yeah, I just think you've got guys that are more on the same page with what he wants to do because they've been in the program so long.
Well,
At the very least, the answer to your question cannot be no, because his record and his results are improving.
Yeah.
And we can dive into the reasons. Having senior guards and big-time scores, that has to help. Getting Dalton Connect is a reason that they were able to go to the Elite Eight, right? So I do think to the adaptation of this era, taking advantage of transfer opportunities.
Yes.
But the program invites those guys. What Dalton did and what the program has done, the culture of it, invited Chaz Lanier because he's getting a lot of money, but he could have gotten more somewhere else. He decided to come to Tennessee.
Instead of Kentucky.
Right.
Yeah.
So both sides benefit from that. But if you lacked trust in Rick Barnes as a coach in March 2 or 3 years ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I just don't know what argument you can make at this point, because they could lose in the next round. But again, that applies to everybody. I think you should have confidence in Rick Barnes and the players that he has helped develop over these last couple of
This
years.
first showed that he has Chaz and Igor. To bring in guys like that, to me, shows he's evolved. Right, because in the past, Rick Barnes was my big, has their backside down on the block. My point guard runs everything on my offense. My point guard shoots a lot, and then will work the ball inside out if everybody else spaces the floor. To me, bringing in the guys that are face-up players like this tells me that he's at least evolved in his thinking, and I think it's led to him having more success right now.
He's continued to hire good assistant coaches
Yep.
too. They have a strong staff that has helped develop what they are right now as a team.
And look how much freedom Connect had last year.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd ever see Rick Barnes, but he saw how tough it would be to stop him if you were trying to guard him. And so he gave him that freedom. But that's one way that he has evolved. I don't know if he's turned a corner, really, as much as he has just evolved the way he coaches.
First time he's been to 3 straight Sweet 16s since 2002, 2003, 2004, and one of those was a Final Four team. So it's been a while since he's had this kind of consistent stretch in the NCAA tournament. Tennessee as a program has never been to 3 straight Sweet 16s. In the NIL and portal era, which we're talking about, it can change quickly. But I don't think there's any doubt anymore from anyone out there, to me, in terms of taking this program to a level and having a consistent stay there, where you're not having to worry who's going to be arrested tomorrow, who's going to be kicked off the team tomorrow. You're going to have this huge backslide next year. I mean, if he was going to have a backslide, you would have thought it would have been this year when you're having to go out and bring in 4 new guys, and he did it. Now, maybe it's next year if he's around next year. And there were rumors this week that we kind of talked about on the show months ago. Rumors, ESPN referred to rumors that he may think about retirement at the end of this year. Well, if he's not, if he stays around, he's going to have to rebuild again. And I have confidence now in watching it the last couple of years that, he can do it. I don't care if he's 70, 71. He can get this done. He's got the vigor to go out there and rebuild it this way. The thing that's impressive to me in terms of changing is he has always been about a culture. It's always been about guys that come in my system and stay here for years and blah, 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 blah. Now he's showing, I can have just as much success plucking guys here and there, putting it together and meshing it. Because that's the thing. And I know everyone's doing it now at a different level. John Calipari, but it took Calipari a longer time to put that team together. They struggled early.
A lot of injuries, too.
Barnes figures this thing out.
Right.
And he figured it out quickly. So I give him tons of credit. I don't know that this program has ever been in better shape than it is right now.
I mean, they're at more than 80 consecutive weeks now being ranked, and a lot of that time is ranked near the top.
Yeah, top 10.
5 weeks this year, number 1, and a lot of time top 5, top 10. So they've been consistent. They've been elite among consistent programs winning at a high level. With all the 25-plus win seasons they've had, they had an SEC tournament title, regular season title, multiple 2-seed opportunities, being in play for a 1 seed. So the list just doesn't really end with what they've done as compared to Tennessee basketball before Rick Barnes arrived. So, I mean, he's put together the best 10-year run we've seen, and I still think the run could go for another 2 or 3 years. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Despite the rumors the past week.
And plus he schedules up, don't forget that. I mean, he
does,
plays. It's not like he's doing this against the Sisters of the Poor.
Yeah, I mean, even this year, the schedule didn't look as good as it has in some past years.
Right,
but you had Baylor, who made the tournament, Louisville, who turned their things around, made the tournament, Illinois, who made the tournament.
Right.
It just wasn't stacked with top 10 teams when you played them, but it turned out a lot of tournament teams were still on there, and he does go out and schedule up. All right, when we come back, the SEC's top 4 seeds are still alive, but is the SEC the best league so far? We'll talk about that. We got a little football to come. Then we're going to get into Kentucky or Illinois. Who do you want to face Friday in Indianapolis? We'll talk about which of these teams, how they match up against Tennessee. How does Tennessee stack up against the remaining teams in the Midwest Regional? All that on the Sports Source. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground. Folks, millions of Americans love to RV it. They love to camp. The weather is getting better and better for that. And if you want to book right now for a place right on the Little Pigeon River, not 10 minutes from all the attractions up there in Sevier County, then you need to get to rivercovecampground.com today. and start locking in your spaces. And boy, they've got amenities like you wouldn't believe. Whether you're wanting the RV package or you're just going to campsite, check out their website. You'll find out everything that they offer. But you'll be able to go ahead and book your stay this spring, this summer, this fall, whenever you want to do it. Get it on the books now. Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground. All right, back with Josh, Chuck, and Will West. Let's take a look right now at our poll question. Who do you want to win in the Sweet 16? Who do you want in the Sweet 16, I should say? Who do you want Tennessee to play in the Sweet 16? Most of you who've gone online have already clicked in. Illinois, Tennessee beat them by 2. Kentucky, Tennessee lost to them twice this year. So I'll be interested to see. It's 60-40 right now. I'll be interested to see if Tennessee fans are like, yeah, they can't beat us a third time. Bring them on. Or if it's like, nah, we're good. We're good. Give us Illinois. So what you do is you take your smartphone, point it right at that QR code just below the Hearthside Bank logo, and play along with us. We always like seeing what you think. It surprises me often. And
I have a feeling how this one's going to play out, John.
Well, if you don't want to do it via the smartphone QR code, you can also go to our website, sportsource.tv/polls. Okay, the SEC got 14 teams into the NCAA tournament. The second round is halfway over, and already 7 of those teams are out. So you've lost half of them in the first round and a half. The SEC is 11-7 overall. The Big Ten, however, 10-2. Didn't get as many bids, but they are 10-2, and they were a perfect 8-0, the best first round in the history of the tournament. Let me go ahead and just put this on the screen for you, give you an idea of what we're talking about. Of the 24 teams still remaining this morning, 21 are from the SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12. We've talked about the fact that the big guys are trying to take over,
Right.
and they're trying to push out the little guys. Well, mission accomplished. They've done it. You've added enough of those teams to where the SEC can lose 7 teams in the first and second round and still have 7 teams remaining. So you don't have to worry anymore about these pesky teams that are, interesting. And in fact, the smallest guys you have left really aren't that small. You're talking Colorado State, New Mexico, and UConn. Those are the only non-Power 4 conferences in there. There are no Cinderellas this year. And I'm sorry if you say that it's like last year, you've pointed this out, Will. NC State was supposed to be considered a Cinderella. It's not a Cinderella. I think it's interesting there's no ACC teams in this. Boy, you go back 20 years, who would have ever thought that? But 7 SEC teams, 6 Big Ten teams, 6 Big 12 teams, and then the other 3 teams. So my question, Chuck, did the SEC deserve the 14 bids it got?
Absolutely not. To me, there was no way Georgia should have gotten in, and I think they showed that. As soundly as they got beaten. Oklahoma, I was kind of on the fence on, but I don't really think Oklahoma deserved a bid. So I don't think
Texas was out in the first 4.
Where you got that was that 89% winning percentage against non-conference play. That's what the SEC kept hammering and hammering and hammering away. But I think you had some, and I guess there's a lot of flawed basketball teams. We've talked about this before, right? But you've got some SEC teams that just can't shoot the ball. And, and I've looked at the Big Ten, and look, watch out for Michigan State. And Michigan's got I think the Big Ten has passed the SEC overall. I still think the top 4 or 5 in the SEC are better.
Okay. Josh, did the SEC deserve its 14 bids?
Well, every
Can you
team
say that yet?
every team that got in had a reason for them to be in there. But if Texas were left out, it would have been very easy to explain why. Because they played their way out through the final 6-7 weeks of the regular season, but they're in the SEC. There was a lot of campaigning on behalf of Texas, and that helped Texas get in. They had talent. They just weren't that good of a team. This is also a reason not to expand the tournament because these teams would be comfortably in, but that's a separate conversation. So
all you're going to see are more of these teams.
Yeah, so my answer would be no. I think the SEC got too many teams in, and some others deserved more love to try to expand things out. I don't think the basketball's been very good, and I think we're watching teams with talent. They don't play very good basketball, and I think some of that's been at the bottom of the SEC.
Yeah, I would say absolutely not even close. No, it was stupid at the time, but they did it to keep Greg Sankey from destroying college athletics. He said, I want 14. You got 14. You gave it to him. You got to placate him, or otherwise we're going to 96 teams and no one's going to watch the NCAA tournament, and everybody else knows that. So But he has the large enough gun that he can sit on the table and say, you're going to give me what I want, or I'm going to come hold this all hostage. He did it for the college football playoff. He went to 12 teams with the byes. That's what Greg Sankey wanted. Now we realize that doesn't work, and I get it. Like, he's trying to look out for the conference, and he did a good job looking out for the conference. But this is by a country mile the worst tournament I have ever seen so far through the first 3 days.
It's not very interesting.
No, it's just boring. And part of it is we don't have mid-majors that are there. Even higher level mid-majors like A10 teams, Missouri Valley Conference teams, MAC teams, AAC teams, you don't ever see them only get one in. No. And instead we get Georgia, who won a third of their conference games, Oklahoma, who won a third of their conference games. They're not a game under 500 in conference. They won
6
1/3.
games.
Yes, they won a
6 games
third of their
under.
conference games.
Yep.
And it makes this product worse. And what we're going to get sold on television and by the analysts is, Arkansas is making a Cinderella run right now with their $5 million in NIL money
It's a
that they
Cinderella.
spend to get players just because they underachieved all year.
Texas A&M Michigan's a perfect example. I would have been more interested watching that if it were Texas A&M versus Hofstra or Michigan versus Florida Gulf Coast. Texas A&M Michigan, I'm like, yeah, okay. If it's just going to be big boys, then just get rid of the little guys altogether right now and just make it the big boys.
And let's run 7-game series like the NBA playoff, right?
That would be more interesting.
Yeah.
I would sit there and at least say, okay, now we're going to see who the real winner is. It's not just, well, this team got hot at the right game. I think it's disappointing. However, I will say this. It may be too early to say they didn't deserve all 14 because all 4 of your top seeds are still alive. Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Auburn. If you wind up with a Final Four of all Tennessee or of all SEC, then everyone's going to say they deserve the bids. It was the best league ever. It's like, well, the top is really good. The top is really good. The bottom didn't deserve all those bids.
They absolutely deserve 10 minimum, though. Like, it was the best conference in college basketball, I think.
Well, again, we go back to what Ken Pomeroy said a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We talked about on the show the fact that when you look at the Big 12 last year, they had some phenomenal record where they set the record for margin of victory in non-conference games, and then they went into the tournament.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that carries over. What you're doing in November, it should count. Does it mean everything for when March rolls around? I don't know. All right.
No.
When we come back, we're going to get off basketball just for a second. We're going to talk football. We got Will Overstreet coming out here to talk about the Vols. Come on back. We're going to tell you reasons for optimism. That's right. We're going to turn him into Sunshine Willie. Come on back. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. We have already gotten into the warmer weather. The storms have hit, so you know it's spring in East Tennessee when the storms start to hit. Folks, now is the time to start planning ahead for mosquito season because they're going to be in your backyard if you don't want them there. You need to take advantage of Southeast Termite and their fantastic mosquito treatment. They broke out a new way of doing it last year, safer for the environment, better for all the other critters, and worse for mosquitoes, which I never have any problem being worse on the mosquitoes. SoutheastTermite.com is where you can learn more. The Haynes family's been doing it since 1971, and they take care of my home as well. Southeast Termite and Pest Control. All right, I want to welcome in the next member of our panel. Right here, we're going to talk a little football with Will Overstreet, VFL Will Overstreet. Will, thanks for being here, man.
It's glad to be here.
Want to talk about, I'm going to give you a chance to be Mr. Positive.
All right, great.
I tried to get Sterling, and he couldn't come, so it's like, well, I'll just have to make you Sunshine Willie.
That's right.
But here's the big question. In spring practice, they just hit spring break, so the players are off doing their thing. Spring practice will reconvene. First of all, what are your thoughts on that? You do spring practice and you stop in the middle, then you have to come back.
It's to make sure you don't go too crazy on spring break. Like that you realize, hey, by the time I get back, it's going to be tough. Because I guarantee that first practice back from spring break, they're going to let you know.
Run all that.
We're going to do a conditioning test that week. You know, so if you go out and do a little too much partying, you're going to pay for it come that first big practice.
Run the pizza and beer out of it.
That's exactly right.
Let me ask you, though, when you look at the big picture for this team, give me your top reason for optimism for the 2025 season. Because you look at it, you're coming off of a playoff year. You've got a lot of the national pundits are still having you in the top 10 this year. When you've got a lot of people to replace, key people in key positions. So what do you think is the biggest reason for optimism?
Well, I think you have a continuity in this coaching staff, right? So I think just, if you look at the NFL over years, the Pittsburgh Steelers, things like that, where you have a coaching staff that's just there year after year after year, it gives you a better chance of coming over weak spots where you're not going to always be the best, and it gives you less of a chance of having that terrible floor, right, and falling down completely. So I think having this coaching staff here for another year, just consistency around this program, everybody knows some things about it, what it can do. I think it's always good. I think the other thing, too, if you look at the schedule, who are your away games? Because that's where you're really going to look in the SEC. Who do you have to play on the road? Well, you play Mississippi State and you play Kentucky on the road. Those are still two games that if I had to go into the season, I give that to Tennessee, right? Then I go, okay, I've got to play Alabama and Florida also on the road. Well, Alabama's going to be working a new quarterback. And so you're going, how does that person come into play? You know, that's going to be a big game. That could be a bigger game for them early on in the season. It's still on the road. You wouldn't necessarily give Tennessee out the gate right now like they're going to win that game. But you go, okay, there could be some things with the new coaching staff. It's not been consistent. And you got a new quarterback they're going to have to be working in. I don't know how that's going to be. So maybe I give myself, hey, I got a better than puncher shot at that being a win for us. And then you've got, look at Florida. At least you're not getting the Gators early on in the year where you have the temperature of going down there, humidity. No. You catch them later in the year.
Like you guys did in 2001.
Exactly. So it gives you a little bit cooler. The other bad thing is I'd say it gets that, to my own counterpoint there would be it's November. And there always seems to be a bad November game for this coaching staff. But overall, I would rather play Florida deeper in the year if I have to play them at their place.
You look at it, I think I would go with coaching staff, not just the continuity, but to me, they have, since they've arrived, I didn't think they would win 7 games in that first year when they lost all those players. So they overperformed that year. I sure didn't see an Orange Bowl bid, an 11-win season the next year. So they overshot that one. Right. The next year, 9-3. It's about kind of where I had them. Last year, I didn't see that as a playoff team going into it. So 9 times out of 10, or 3 times out of 4, this coaching staff does a little bit more than I expect. So I'll look at the roster and I see, well, that's a hole, that's a hole, that's a hole. But in the end, they do a pretty good job of filling in the holes.
And playing with who they have on the team. And then you have to look at it and go, are you going to be good on defense? I think all indications are, listen, they figured out how to find players and put players, especially on the defensive line, to make this a top-tier group. I just have to look at Rodney Gardner and what they've been able to do in the last couple of years, and I go, that's consistently something that I can go say, I can probably count on that being a top-tier defensive line in this league. So with that, I go, hey, that's going to give me a chance here too.
I was looking forward to Jermod McCoy having a second year in this system because he looked good. Like tears his ACL, should be back, but you wonder – sometimes it takes a year, depending on the position. Some react better than others. Receivers usually takes a year before they're really confident. We'll see about a cornerback, but that's the only thing that I would feel so much better about this defense. If McCoy hadn't gotten hurt, you've still got Gibson there, you're good to go. The McCoy thing throws an odd wrench into the plans, but we'll see. All right, Will, I tell you what, hang around with us because we got more coming up when we come back. Can Nico Iamaleava take the step forward that everybody expects if the receivers beside him and the offensive line in front of him don't take an equal step forward? Make that next. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Folks, they're great deals. The clock is ticking right now. You get Skeeter Bass Boats, rebates up to $4,000 if you purchase by March 31st. You got about a week. G3 John Boats and Bass Boats, rebates up to $2,000 if you purchase by March 31st. You got about a week. G3 Suncatcher Pontoons, rebates up to $2,500. You know the drill. March 31st, you got about a week. Madisonville Marine, there's no better place to buy a boat. Get down there and see Joe Special and the team this week. Tell them we said, hey, madmarine.com if you can't make it down there. But you'd be crazy not to make it down there. It's Highway 411 North in Madisonville. All right, let's remind folks of the poll. Let's see where we are on the polling question. Oh, wow, it's still Illinois, but it's gotten closer. 56 to 44. No, it hasn't gotten. Yeah, it has gotten closer. 56-44. Yeah. I can't do math.
That's right.
56-44. Illinois, Kentucky. You tell us who you want Tennessee to face in the next game. That'll be in Indianapolis on Friday. All right. Back with Josh Ward, Chuck Cavaliers, Will Overstreet. I'm going to start off with Will again. Everyone expects Nico Iamaleava to make a big step forward this fall, to become the guy worthy of all the NIL dollars and apparently the raise this offseason. But if the offensive line and the receivers don't take a step forward, if they're the same as they were last year, do you expect Nico to be the kind of player who can lift all boats, who can take that jump forward, even with everybody else just flatlining, if that's the case?
No, you can't do it if they just flatline. Like you've got to have some attributable improvement in some areas. I mean, he will take steps forward. There will be things he did early in the games last year, early in the season, that he won't do this next year, that he'll make some more plays. He showed his ability with his feet in the bowl game and the playoff game. So, I mean, he's going to be able to take some more steps. There will be some growth in his game if everybody stays the same. But are we saying, can he be an elite Heisman Trophy, guy that everybody's talking about is the #1 draft pick? He's got to have attribution and growth from the other members of that team. You can't have the offensive line, become just a sore spot and weakness again. And you got to have a wide receiver that catches a 5-yard route, makes a guy miss, and takes it for 40, right? That has to be there, and you've got to figure those things out. So I think you have to have that growth in some other players and positions for him to really hit his milestones. You will see some growth from him. He will be better, but it will not be where fans expect it to be unless those other places come.
Yeah, I mean, the point you made, that's what Hendon Hooker had working for him. And Hendon Hooker was a really good quarterback here, but he got help. He got help when a 10-yard pass went for 50.
Yeah.
He got help when a 20-yard pass went for 80. We didn't see a lot of that for Nico last year. Can he make a sizable jump if those guys in front and beside him don't make equal jumps?
No. I mean, how could you even really expect him to? I mean.
So you're saying that was a stupid question?
No. No. But I do have a smart answer in one regard.
We'll see.
There is a new improved Nico in terms of his playing weight. That's one of the stories coming out earlier, that he's 20 to 30 pounds heavier. You can really see it upper body. So at least that's one step forward that I think needed to be made. But
May get back to running him more.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if your offensive line doesn't hold up, if your receivers, like Will was saying, can't do more, then what are you going to have? Who are you going to be depending on it running?
Well, I just wonder if you're looking at a guy who, I guess the question comes down to, do you believe this is one of those guys, you put him in the lineup, everybody gets better, you take him out of the lineup, everybody goes down? There are those players out there who are just electric, amazing.
Yeah, he's not Michael Vick. Okay, so
There you go.
that's not
question.
not
Yeah,
him.
Cam Newton,
right?
2010.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
So, do you think he could take a big step forward if the other guys don't take a big step forward?
Well, John, you asked a good question.
Thank you, Josh. You win this round.
I have no doubt that Nico is going to be better 2025 compared to 2024. He will be a better quarterback, which can help the offense improve. If he is a more consistent runner, that can help the offense. But what we're talking about is can the offense with Nico get close to what 2022 was?
Yeah.
And he still has to have help because in the SEC, they're going to play teams that are able to pressure the quarterback. If they're not better on the edge helping protect Nico, that's going to affect him at times. If Mike Matthews doesn't make a jump like we think he's capable of with his talent, then there are going to be times where Nico's probably frustrated trying to get plays made on the outside. But if Mike Matthews makes a jump and Nico makes a jump, that's where you see the major improvement. And Nico has talked about being the quarterback that most people thought he could be 2 or 3 years ago.
All right, very good. Appreciate you guys. Good job, Will. Good job, Josh.
And Chuck.
Chuck, you were here. When we come back, I want to show you a 4-round mock draft that NFL.com put up. There are some surprises in there in terms of former Vols going in the draft. I want to get Will's reaction. I want to get the other Will's reaction. It'll be Triumph of the Wills. Next, coming back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Hearthside Bank. Hearthside Bank, full-service bank locations all over southeastern Kentucky, East Tennessee. Whether you need business banking, personal banking, financial planning, mortgaging, they do it all. I know one friend of mine who has been back to them. He and his family have had 3 different homes mortgaged all through Hearthside Bank. They do a good job and they'll take good care of you. It is personal banking. When you go in there, you're dealing with humans. You're not dealing with a face on a screen of somebody who's in Kalamazoo. It's right here in Personal, from southeast Kentucky all the way down to Farragut here in East Tennessee. Hearthside Bank, always within reach. All right, back here with Will Overstreet and Will West. Chad Reuter posted a mock draft at NFL.com this week, the official NFL website, so you would assume that doesn't mean he has inside knowledge, but it's also not Joe Blow on Bleacher Report. Let's take a look at this draft because there are some surprises in here. Your first Vol picked, James Pierce. That's not a surprise. 60. Pick 60. Now, there have been people who have pushed him out of the first round. Some others have moved him back inside the first round. This has him free falling to the end of the second round, going to the Lions. James Pierce, the 60th pick. Then, all we've heard is defense, Omar Norman Lott, et cetera. The next two picks on offense, both to the 49ers in the third and fourth round. Dylan Sampson with the 100th pick, and then 13 picks later, Dante Thornton, who ran the great speed at the Combine, which always means so much. These teams that go nuts over the Combine. Fourth round at 124. Then you get Omar Norman Lott. All right, Wills. What's the more? I guess let's start with the James Pierce thing. 60th. I mean, look, he's a speed guy. I think he was overrated. I said he was overrated going into last season. I thought he was overrated during the season. I don't know that he does exactly what the coaches want him to do, which I think may be harming his draft stock. But 60th, if my team got him at 60, I'd be okay with that. That's a heck of a drop.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to drop that far. I mean, there has to be a lot of other things to go on for a guy with that much talent, with that much speed. There's going to be somebody that chooses him a little bit earlier than that. I think it's closer to, is he 30, 31, or 32 the back half of the first, or does he fall into the first 10 picks of the second?
Yeah.
But I'm not.
All the way to the end of the
all
second
the way to
round.
the end of the second seems a little bit unreasonable.
Yeah, I'm with Will. Someone's going to take a chance on that. Also, it seems like his team's really out there trying to combat some of the cultural questions and character questions that have had there with James Pierce. But there are some. And for whatever reason, it seems like there are a lot of people who in town want to say, there are no character questions, they just didn't like to talk. No, there are. And like the NFL's going to find you out. And so look, I agree with Will. I don't buy CBS Sports had him at like 12 this week. I don't think he's going that early. But I think late first round, I think somebody might take a flyer on him and say, this guy could be a generational talent if he has his head on straight.
And I think it could be better for him if he winds up on a good team. Again, I think he's better off if you take him as the speed rusher that he is. If you put him on a team where, like the Eagles, where you've got three other guys, and he can rotate you in and rotate you out. If you put him on some bad team and you say, okay, now go be Myles Garrett, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, he doesn't need to go to the Arizona Cardinals, right? Like, don't go there, right? But he needs to go to some place that has a defensive locker room with a culture of strength in it. You know, you could put him on a Pittsburgh Steelers with a T.J. Watt and that crew, and you're going to fall in line, right? Like, you're going to be in line. So there's going to be certain teams, like I said, they're going to look at maybe their locker room if they think it's a cultural problem, could be a problem. They may pass on him on some of those things. But if there also is a group of teams that look at their defensive line room and they go, hey, we got the defensive line room to overcome this, and he's going to get right with us, or he's going to get off the bus. A Lions right now would have the strength there. Like, there are going to be other teams that say, and so when he shows up at a certain pick on your board and you had him rated as maybe a 15-level talent, but he falls to the second round, you're going to start picking right there.
And I would also say, like, could he not replace Josh Sweat, who's been gone in free agency from the Eagles? Jalen Carter hasn't been a problem at all there, but you saw even when he loses his composure on the field, the other veterans come over, calm him down. Someone could do that to James Pierce on a good franchise.
Absolutely.
You've seen some mock drafts that have Omar Norman Lott up in the first round. Again, with any of these, all it takes is one team to fall in love with you. And another reason I don't think Pierce is going to fall at, he plays one of the 5 positions that everybody's trying to find. So the fact that you've got a guy with talent, I just think somebody's going to take a chance, culture or not, way before 60. Omar Norman Lott, though, all the way down there after Dylan Sampson, who had a great year, after Dante Thornton, who ran a fast combine time, I would be shocked if Omar Norman Lott is behind both of those guys.
I think third round is minimum where you'd see him taken, but I think there's a chance he goes in the second round. But I don't think he's a 4th-round guy. Like, I think you're going to see that go higher.
A
Where
defensive
did
tackle with some
The
pass
pass
rush
ability,
goals.
I just
Well, tackle seems to just go. There's always tackles that are projected late second to go in the first. Every year, the last 3-4 years, that's the way that's gone. I agree with Will. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick because I think there are still some questions with Omar Norman-Lott as well, in the same vein as James Pierce. But I think that he will be a guy that's a rotational defensive tackle. You'd love to have one of those, especially on a rookie contract. So I think he's a second or third round guy.
you look at guys like the Rams and what they've done with these kind of versatile defensive linemen. Norman Lott's that kind of guy, right? I could play him at an end. I could play him inside pass rush. So, I mean, his value right now to me is if you're starting to see him, teams are going to start considering him in second round.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be, when do they pull the trigger? And it's going to be somewhere between second and third, in my opinion.
And I don't think anybody here is knocking Dylan Sampson at all. I think we all like Dylan Sampson as a back, but running back, even after you had a couple made big charges last year, kind of the rebirth of the running back, I still don't see a running back going ahead of what could be, if you get him into control, an elite pass rusher in Pierce, and going before a guy like Omar Norman-Lott, who you just don't have a lot of defensive tackles who are good pass rushers.
It's a deep draft, too, for running backs this year. I mean, it's just super deep. So if you look and say a defensive tackle's there in the 3rd round, I could take the running back or defensive tackle. It doesn't mean you don't like Dylan Sampson. You're taking the defensive tackle because I can get another running back in the 4th or 5th.
Yeah. Will Overstreet, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah,
we appreciate it, man. We may drag you back here after the orange and white game. Okay, when we come back, let's get into the basketball talk the rest of the way. We're going to talk about who Tennessee still has in the Midwest region. We'll show you exactly how they stack up against the teams they're going to face if they're going to make it to San Antonio in the Final Four. Come on back. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. Boy, you can do doorbell cams and lights and locks that are all controlled from your smartphone or your tablet, cameras throughout your house. They do it all, so when you're traveling, you don't have to worry. When you're away from home, you don't have to worry about your home. And if you're a business owner, same thing. Safety Systems, VFL JJ Surlis and his team can take good care of you. They've taken good care of me over the years. They do great work in terms of security systems and in terms of home automation. Visit their website today, safetysystems.com. Okay, let's take a look at the final poll results and see what we got. Oh, it swung to the Wildcats. Vol fans, you're not worried. You can't beat the Vols 3 times. That's right. You want to play Kentucky next. All right, interesting. And we do have some Kentucky folks that watch up in the Middlesboro and that area. So right now they're like, we'll remember this. It's going on a message. We're going on a bulletin board. All right, so
I'm impressed. That's an upset to me. I thought Illinois would win.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by Tennessee fans.
I think we just dared them to do it.
Yeah,
They did it,
that's
so there we
probably
go.
right, yeah.
But that's good. Thank you very much for playing along. We appreciate it. I want to show you now, these are all courtesy of CBB Analytics. It's a group that colleges use, that pro teams use in terms of finding numbers, and it's a lot of charts that are XY graphics, so we'll explain it to you, but it's a great way to visualize how Tennessee stacks up against the foes that are still remaining in the Midwest region, standing between them and their first ever Final Four trip. First, let's take a look at the bracket just to give you a look right here. The Vols road to San Antonio. All right, it's Purdue versus Houston. It's chalk over there. And then it's Tennessee versus either Kentucky or Illinois. Both of those games Friday. And then if Tennessee wins against Kentucky or Illinois, we'll be back here next Sunday doing an Elite Eight preview of the Volunteers, which would be fun. We got to do that a couple of years ago. Let's see. Did they play on a Sunday last year? I'm trying to remember if that was a Sunday. I think it was.
I believe so.
We did one last year. We did it for the Michigan State game, so maybe we could pull them through one of these days. But let's take a look next. Offense versus defense. All right, so this is CBB Analytics. What we got here, offensive rating and defensive rating. Along the bottom is the offense. So better offense, farther to the right. Better defense, that's up and down. So you see Houston's got a better defense than Tennessee. They're higher. Tennessee, better than everybody else there. But look at Tennessee's offense compared to the remaining teams in there, including Houston. In terms of offensive efficiency, Houston much more efficient than Tennessee, even though that Sampson offense, he's more than happy to play you in the 50s and the 60s, the same way Rick Barnes plays. Let's take a look at the next one. Dominant versus dominated. This is interesting. Wins without trailing and losses without ever leading. These are these streaky teams. You look here, in terms of wins without trailing, Houston, 15 times this year they went wire to wire. That's a level of dominance that Tennessee didn't hit. Now you can say that the SEC is a tougher conference. You've got one more team remaining than the Big 12 right now, so I'm not sure about that. But anyway, you've got, in terms of wins without trailing, Tennessee second to Houston, but Houston way up there. In terms of losses without ever leading, teams that fell behind and didn't come back. I mean, Illinois is a team that had plenty of those where they just never even led in the game. So that's up at the top. They had that happen 3 times. Kentucky had it happen a couple times. Again, Houston, they never lost wire to wire. They never trailed an entire game like that. They're a dominant team, or at least they have been against the competition they've played so far. Let's take a look at blown leads versus comebacks. Okay, at the bottom, wins when trailing by 10 points or more. Look at Kentucky. That's the left to right. Kentucky's had 3 of those where they came back when trailing by 10. In terms of losses, when leading by 10, that's the bottom. Purdue has had 4 of those. Illinois has had 3, including against Tennessee. They led Tennessee by 10. That hasn't happened to Tennessee all year long. You haven't lost when leading by 10. Even Houston has had 1, but Tennessee has not. Here's another one. Push it and score it. What you get here? At the bottom are fast break points per 100 possessions. In terms of teams that stylistically are not what you do, that's Kentucky, far right. Left to right is that chart, and far right is Kentucky. They will get it up and down the court. In terms of points scored per 100 possessions, that's top to bottom, and Tennessee is at the bottom. Points per 100 possessions. So in other words, Kentucky, on paper, and then the 2 games when you play them, not the best matchup necessarily. And then last, let's look at defensive strengths. Steal percentage versus block percentage. In terms of steals, that is left to right. Tennessee second only to Houston. In terms of block percentage, that is top to bottom. Tennessee up there with Houston. So when you look at these charts, I think you see one, Houston's awfully darn good.
Yeah.
I mean, Houston is, 15 times they've won wire to wire this year. They're a more dominant team. It became, when the brackets came out, there was a lot of talk of, well, we're the same as Houston. Stylistically, in terms of playing in the 50s and 60s and defense first, I think you are very similar to Houston. Otherwise, Houston, whether they're in a different conference or not, they're more dominant than Tennessee is, and they have been. But you look at last night, doesn't mean you can't lose. Gonzaga almost got them. I just think when you look at that, it shows you that Tennessee's offense is where your biggest concerns are. No surprise there.
Right.
I think it shows you that Kentucky, to me, on paper and in the 2 games we've seen, may not be your best matchup. And I think it shows you that Houston's going to be tougher than some people think if you wind up facing them in the next round. Your reactions to what you saw, any disagreements with the way I interpret that?
No, I would say that Houston is, they do a lot of what Rick Barnes does, Kelvin Sampson does, but with players built for that, as opposed to players who are built for playing in space. I mean, Igor Milicic is built to play in space. Chaz is built to play in space. So they have recruited to that. They're not very deep, but they are dominant at what they do. The key is you have to find something like Mark Few and Gonzaga did last night. They put them in a half-court trap, and Houston could not handle it. They also missed.
It was bad. It was worse than UCLA versus Tennessee. It was ugly.
And they don't hit free throws away from home either. That's another big thing that can matter in the NCAA tournament because you're always away from home.
Yeah.
So I think, and Tennessee is hitting their free throws right now. But Houston is better at doing the thing that Tennessee's trying to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, they're a concerning team, but Kelvin Sampson usually goes home early in the tournament.
And without even getting into quad 1 wins, which is obviously important, you see why Houston was number 1 seed based on those charts and not trailing in 15 games.
Yeah.
You also see why Kentucky can be so hard to beat. I mean, they can fall behind by 10 points and come back and win. And a lot of teams don't have that ability the same way they did. Yeah. Purdue's playing good, but I think I would still rather play Illinois. Looking at all this stuff, that's who I would rather play out of those teams.
Well, Purdue's beaten you through the last 3 times you've seen them, and 2 of those are in the NCAA tournament. I'd just as soon avoid Purdue, I think.
Right.
Yeah, although your numbers tell me I'll take my shot against Purdue in the Elite Eight this time with no Zach Edey there compared to everything Houston's done this season.
Absolutely.
But, the Kentucky matchup, it's been a question because of the way those 2 games went, and some of those numbers that you showed do indicate obvious differences in what they're doing. I'm sure Tennessee staff, though, is already planning, well, we're going to have either Kentucky or Illinois. They'll have almost a full week to get ready for Kentucky to look at the previous 2 games, what needs to change from those 2 games to make sure you don't get the same result on Friday. Again, if it's Kentucky. So I'd rather see.
Hang on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We'll hang on. Let's talk more about Kentucky, Illinois in the next segment. We got a couple more numbers to talk to, and we'll tell you a couple more things that stood out from those first 2 games against the Wildcats. That's next. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back. This segment of the show brought to you by Games and Things. Folks, it's their spring clearance sale going on right now. Everything in their store is up to 50% off. 50%. If you saw our bracket show on YouTube the other night, you saw us enjoying a shuffleboard table, you saw us enjoying a poker table, and Will, you were there, Chuck, you were there. We were having to fight guys to keep everybody away from the Papa Shot. Bob Hodge was locked onto the Papa Shot like there was no tomorrow. All these games, you can get them at Games and Things, and right now, the spring clearance sale, you can get them at a discount. Games and Things at the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road. All right, let's do just a few more stats here just to give you an updated look, some more information about the teams remaining. I thought this was interesting. Great visual here. 3-point attempt rate versus 3-point percentage. Now, at the bottom is who shoots the most threes. You see Illinois, 47%. They pop those things like crazy. Tennessee shoots the the second most of this group. They shoot the second most. So to the right is the most. In terms of shooting it well, that's top to bottom. So you and Illinois have something in common. You fire a lot of threes and you're not great hitting them. Now, that doesn't mean you're horrible, but still, Houston, they don't pop a lot of them, but they make the ones they shoot. So I thought that was interesting that Tennessee, we've talked about that all year long. Do they, and it fell into this trap we'll talk about with Kentucky in just a second, do they fall into that trap where they just go 3 crazy and they can't hit anything? Let's move on to the next one, scoring streaks and droughts. All right, this is 10-0 runs. In terms of teams going on 10-0 runs, Tennessee did it, that's on the left, Tennessee did it 19 times this year. That would be dead last in terms of these 5 teams. Now, they did it last night to UCLA, so that number would be 20 now, but they didn't have a lot of 10-0 runs. They were best in terms of 10-0 droughts. Because their defense is so good, even when they go on a scoring drought, they don't usually get run out by 10 points or more. Whereas you see Illinois has a lot of those droughts where somebody comes back from a 10-0 or makes a 10-0 run on them. So interesting. Houston, in terms of putting a 10-0 run on somebody, again, that's interesting because Houston has the great defense. Tennessee has the great defense, but Houston turns that into a lot of 10-0 runs, whereas Tennessee, not so much. All right, let's move to the next one. This is just something that could come back on Tennessee in terms of personal fouls, but when you see Tennessee going to the line getting a lot of points, personal fouls drawn per 100 possessions, don't ever complain that the refs aren't taking care of you because you're the best of these 5 teams. You've been really good at getting fouls drawn all year long. So that is a help to Tennessee. Let's flip it and look at personal fouls called where you worry about Tennessee getting into foul trouble. They're middle of the pack. In terms of personal fouls called, Houston gets a lot. So if you're looking for something to key in if Tennessee plays Houston next year or next week, that's what you may want to look at is, okay, well, Houston has a tendency to foul. You get a lot of personal foul calls drawn. All right, maybe that's a positive for you. Okay, let's talk about Tennessee and Illinois. They played in December. Tennessee won by 2 up there, but Illinois led them at 1 point by 7. They had another lead at 8, and they had another lead at 1 point by 10. So 3 different times they had pretty sizable leads on Tennessee. Tennessee came back and won by 2. In terms of Kentucky, they beat the Vols twice, as you know. The amazing thing, they shot 12 of 24 from 3 in the first game. They shot 12 of 24 from 3 in the second game. So in 2 games against Tennessee, they were 24 of 48 from 3, 50%. Meanwhile, wow. And this is what I was just talking about. Meanwhile, Tennessee went 3 crazy. 14 of 63. Oh. 63 threes they fired up against Kentucky. 14 of 63. So beyond the arc, Kentucky was 50%. You were 22% in those 2 games. So my question, you were about to say it.
I almost. I apologize.
Who would you rather have, Kentucky or Illinois?
Well, you know what they say. It's difficult to shoot 12 of 24 from 3 against a good team 3 straight times.
Yeah. It's an old adage.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah. And, of course, Tennessee played at Rupp. They played at Illinois, and that's a game where you dealt with foul issues and things like that. I think I would rather take on Illinois. I would have full confidence in Tennessee's coaching staff to have a plan ready to go against Kentucky on Friday. I think Tennessee would be favored against either team, but I would rather take my chances against Illinois with almost a week to get ready, having beaten them at their place in a really hostile game that they played.
Okay, got to be a little quick here. Who you taking? Illinois or Kentucky? Who'd you rather play?
Well, I think you would have a better chance of beating Illinois. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I think hard to beat somebody 3 times in the same season. Yeah, it is, but it happens. And Kentucky, obviously, what they do, I don't know if their freshman guard is going to go off, but it's clearly to me Illinois.
Yeah, it's Illinois by a country mile.
Right.
Kentucky goes at too much tempo, and if they hit threes, Tennessee tries to match. I have 2 games that show me that.
You play their style. You fall into what they want to do.
Especially if you fall behind, and that's human nature.
Yep.
And you're in Indianapolis, so you'll have plenty of people that come down from Chicago, but I know how Big Blue Nation travels.
Right.
I'd just as soon not see that arena filled with Kentucky Blue, too, if
Also,
I'm Tennessee.
they have better players than Tennessee does, like from a roster standpoint, or at least equivalent. Illinois does not, especially with the injuries they're dealing with right now.
Well, Kentucky wanted Chaz Lanier and didn't get him.
That's right.
All right. When we come back, will we be getting you ready for an Elite Eight game next Sunday? In other words, will Tennessee win their Sweet 16 game against Kentucky or Illinois? And how far are they going? Will's already given us his take. We'll see what the other guys say. Come on back.
Yeah,
He's an Italian.
they got a little
He
bit,
likes
a little bit of personality, a little bit of spunk. Some might say arrogance. I don't know, but well earned, well deserved, and I think that's part of the reason why they're so good.
Yeah.
There's nothing that they can see that'll make them back down.
It's almost like a WWE story. We went from being like underdog to everyone hating us, and now they've almost embraced being the bad guys, especially on the road.
Yeah.
Like they want to take it to someone in their house, which is not the most usual thing, especially for a group that has to re-gel every year now in the NIL era. And that's one thing that's super impressive to me about the team as a whole and then the coaching staff. It feels like there is no lag from year to year, and the supporting cast is always different, especially the last 3 years, going from the Drew Gilbert, Jordan Beck team, the Christian Moore, Blake Burke team, and now this team.
Yeah.
But they always have someone that's kind of the rowdy guy leading the bunch, and they have no issue with being the bad guy.
That is from the new show Hardball. That's Andrew Lee, Will Heflin, A.J. Simcox, 3 former Vols sitting around talking UT baseball. I always hear from a few people here, they're like, you need to talk UT baseball more. Well, right there it is, Sports Source Digital Network on YouTube. That's where you prove it. You want to see me move those guys over to this show? Go watch it there on YouTube. Hardball, and there is no host to that show. Well, Will Heflin kind of hosts it, but there's no outside host. It is just you as a fly on the wall hearing 3 guys who know the program talk ball. Hardball on the Sports Source Digital Network every week. You can also follow us on our original YouTube channel in case you missed this show, or in case you're out of town, you want to see it. You can get it there. That's the orange channel, black channel, Sports Source Digital Network, and you can also follow us on our Facebook page, Sports Source Digital Network. Okay. Friday in Indianapolis, Tennessee is going to face Illinois or Kentucky. Do you think we will be talking about an Elite Eight game next Sunday? Will Tennessee get by? And I go ahead and refresh people of your picks. You think they will?
I think they will. I think they're in the Final Four. I have them in the finals playing Florida. Part of that's this way. You don't have to have 5 straight good offensive games to make the finals with the draw that they got. Houston, Kelvin Sampson, 1 seed 2 years in a row, lost in the Sweet 16 each of the last 2 years. He goes home early. Mark Pope just won his first NCAA tournament game. So, yes, I think Tennessee's going to be in the Final Four, the Elite Eight and the Final Four.
Okay. Chuck, is Tennessee in the Elite Eight next Sunday?
Yes, I
They get by
think they
Kentucky
will.
or
Yeah.
Illinois.
Right, because in a way, the further you go, the more confidence you get to. And with this group, I think they're really, with their guards, I just wish Igor Milicic could have the type of game we all think is capable. And I think that could be what it comes down to. Does he kind of get out of his own way? Does he quit having 2 quick fouls?
He scored 35 in the 2 games. He got 19 and 16 against Kentucky in those 2 earlier games. So he scored on Kentucky, but didn't do much good.
Right.
So, Josh, will we be talking about an Elite Eight game next Sunday?
Well, Tennessee fans want positivity. Are they afraid of the jinx? Will I jinx if I say yes? I'd pick Tennessee to go to the Final Four at the beginning of the tournament. My confidence has been strengthened the way that they're playing. So, yes, I think Tennessee will win on Friday and make the Elite Eight.
Okay, so you've got the finals.
Yep.
You've got them in the Final Four and then losing to
Duke.
All right. Where do you have them at this point?
Region final.
You're still region final,
I'm
lose
still
to
region
Houston?
final, yeah.
That's where I am too.
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
It's a 50-50 shot against Houston. We got to go.
okay.
Thank you, Chuck.
I had a great point.
Great. find him outside. He'll be telling everybody yelling on the street. See you next Sunday right back here on the Sports Source. Visit our sponsors. They're the ones that make this possible. See you on the Sports Source Digital Network all week.